Hey, my super pro spin there. I'm going to talk to you today about money and my trade, my my how I got here, kind of the journey, and along the lines, what I was paid, you know, like hourly when you start out until where you get now, because I never really knew. Like in early days, everybody knew what everybody was getting paid. Right? When I got out of the service, it was 1987, and I moved back home to Seaside Park, and I started working with a buddy of mine. We worked for this company called Berkeley Construction. They had these big condos at a marina, and the town stopped them. It's a whole other story. But on the marina, they had a boat building, and the son of the owner, Phil, had been trained by a master woodworker, and he took me under his wing, and he taught me how to really build furniture right off the bat. So I was making high end stuff at that time. But when I started with them, that was after work. Phil and I would do that. When I first started with them, I was just a gopher. It was $4.75 an hour, 1987. Had a roommate, and you could live on that. And then within a year, it was like $8 an hour. $8 an hour in 87, 88 was pretty good money. If you were making $10 an hour, you were doing really well at that time. I quickly moved up, and the job changed. The owner bought some property on the island, and we started building houses there. We built a custom home, then we did two duplexes, and across the street, the Triborough First Aid Squad, we did the addition on that. And it was interesting because I had been the number one architecture student in my school, in high school. I won a bunch of awards my senior year, so I could read plans. So right from the beginning, on the first house that we built, I was walking over looking at the plans and finding ways to figure out more square footage in a room by tucking the closets in underneath and things like this. And they loved it. So yeah, it's interesting. Right from the jump, I was already a different type of thinker. I'm not just going to do something and that's it. Now, in the beginning, we dug the footings and built the forms and poured the foundations and did the block work and framed the houses. I did all this stuff all the way up to the roofing, installing custom cabinets, building your own countertops, learning how to use Formica, laminates, contact cement, and all that stuff. I got very good at it. And after about a year and a half, I quit and moved on. And I jumped around with other carpenters around the area, and $8 an hour. And then I worked with a guy. I can't remember the order at this point. I think I worked with this guy Roy at that time for a while, 6, 8 months or so, doing home improvement work. And I learned a lot, how to installing things like garage door openers, new toilets, doing plumbing and some electrical and all that kind of thing. And I worked with my buddy Bill Spice. We built his house, and then we built a bunch of other houses, and we did whole additions. We did new stick framing across the bay there in Bayville. And Phil was a teacher. He went back to teaching. I said Phil, but I meant Bill. And I was on my own for a while. I worked in a few cabinet shops, and it's funny because a couple of those jobs didn't work out because they started me off paying me more based on my reputation already at that time than some of the guys have been working there longer, and that created a thing on the job. I didn't know. I didn't tell anybody what I was making. There's a thing, you don't typically on the job. You shouldn't be talking about what kind of money you're making. And this is a weird video to even be talking about because people try to keep what they make private, and I recommend that you do that. Okay. Anyhow, so eventually I got to like $10 an hour, and that was pretty decent money in the 80s. I kind of got out of it a little bit. Went back to college. Well, went to college and when I was like 23. And I started working in the nightclub business a couple years earlier. So I was already a bartender, bar back, DJ. I did all these things. And I would take on other jobs on the side, like for the owner of the nightclub. I took out a wall in her house, I put up a beam and did all that work. And I started charging for those jobs, and I was basing that on probably a $10 an hour rate at that time. A lot of stuff happened. I came out here to LA in September of 1992, drove across the country. Got out here, started working. I ended up living in West Hollywood for the first 3 months I lived here. That was a friggin' thing. And I was hustling, just trying to figure out how to survive. I got a job on Melrose at Brian Jeffries' Design Greenhouse. And I worked with the one dude doing the plants. So we would install plants in famous people's homes. A lot of the actors from LA Law, I remember going in their homes at the time and installing plants, removing, taking them out, root bound stuff, trimming plants, watering plants, Spanish moss, all that stuff. But because I had carpentry skills, I did a lot of work on the store. That's kind of how I sold myself to them. And I quit that and moved into this joint right here, this apartment, in February 1993. And there were some people that lived here I was friends with for years. And the woman had helped write a play and produced it. And so I went in, and I'd never done before, but I designed and built a set. And that started me in a career of getting into the film business. So it started off with me doing theater. I did a bunch of theater sets. I've been written up in the LA Weekly, the Hollywood Reporter. My name's in the first ever Los Angeles magazine. They weren't stories about me, but they mentioned me because I designed and built the sets. Now, at that time, for the first 6 or 8 months I lived here, I was the handy guy for these 3 properties. And I was working that out at like $10 an hour. And every time somebody moved out, I'd go in there and, redo the place. Now, the difference between me and a typical carpenter is I have vision and imagination, and I get bored. So I always want to do things better than I did it the last time. And I understand design as an aesthetic. And I understand what I'm walking into, and I know that I can make something blend with the original intention of the design aesthetic of the time that the place was built. So, I have an imagination, and I'm a creative guy. I'm really more of an artist, but I never said that out loud to anybody because it sounded pretentious. And I was in LA, and I was around a bunch of people that say they do a lot of things that they don't really do, right? I'm an actor, but you did some extra work, So I was always kind of cautious about that until the 90s when I had a friend here who I did a video on, Jason Crum, who's a painter. And Jason said to me one day, because by this point I was starting to make some furniture. He said, "Hey man, you are an artist. Your medium is wood. So an artist telling you you're an artist, then it's acceptable." He's in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. So coming from him, it meant something. But at that time, you're still hustling. So like theater work, most people work for free. I never worked for free. Never. Even the first job I ever did, I got $1,000 out of them, right? To design and build that set. Everybody else was donating their time. So I was never a sucker. I worked on a lot of little independent films, making things happen for these directors, and always got paid. Always got paid. Back then in the 90s, $175 a day to $200 a day, $250 a day, in that range. It just started getting to like $250 a day. When I got into the film business, I started doing, it was non-union, and that's about what the pay rate was, $175 to $250 depending. Most of the jobs I went on, they would start you at $175, but if you were good, and that's always happened to me, I'd get called in the office and they'd say, "Hey, you're really good, we're going to give you the $250. So that worked out pretty good for me. Being in the film business was really good for me for the creative side of things because I had to age things down and make things look correct. And I quickly became the guy on set that I would bring my own tools, big toolbox. I'd build a table in the corner, and I was tasked with building the stuff that would play on screen, right? The hero props. I was a prop maker. And then I was on-set carpenter quite a bit, so I'd be there while they were filming to adjust things, change things out, replace a door if it gets kicked in, putting squibs in, those are the gunshots things like that. But this was non-union stuff. And then I got on a TV show. But I did a couple films and a couple TV shows that did go union. I think I did that 5 times, and I never joined. I was not interested in it at the time. I was already burnt out on it. So this was by the end of the 90s, I was getting burnt out on the TV film industry and the people, you know how that is, right? With these people. So I didn't really want to do it anymore. And I got hurt on a film restoration. Robert Downey Jr., Meg Ryan, Sam Neill. I blew my ankle out. I had to get ankle surgery. It was 3 or 4 ankle surgeries. It was scopes and then a ligament reconstruction. That took me out of the workforce for 4 years. It was bad. One surgery after another, recovering. They put me on disability, which was good. That was the one good thing working in the film business. And during that time, whenever I was walking, able to walk and put weight on it, I was taking on little projects. I started teaching myself how to build quality furniture. They were paying me good to sit on my ass. So I was buying tools. I had the workshop here from when I was the handy guy. It was a little room in the basement of the building next door. So people will call me, and that's how I've always gotten my work. If you're good, you don't really have to advertise or anything. Word of mouth is enough. And I knew enough people already. I'm an affable fella, and people see what I do. And one thing led to another, and I was already locked down. I mean, I worked for this guy Jimmy Doolittle when I first got here. When I was in the film in the theater business, and he was an angel, one of those guys that funded theater work. Old guy, loved me, rich dude. I don't have my water, but you go in his house, and he just had like from knee level to the ceiling pictures of him with every famous person on the planet. Princes of countries, kings, queens, famous rock stars, celebrities, you name it. And so I did custom work for him on his condo over there in West Hollywood, and he always paid me really well. And that led to meeting other people. So I did a lot of work for producers, directors, writers, actors, all that thing. And then living here in this building, I only did the handy guy thing here for about this first 6 or 8 months. I had built up enough at that point where, like back pay what they owed me, the family that owned these properties, where we had a meeting and we said, look, this isn't going to work out for us. I was stuck here. I couldn't get anywhere else to do any work to make money. And I had about 6 months of rent backed up that they owed me. So I didn't pay rent for 6 months, you know. But they let me keep the shop. So again, I was in the shop building stuff. So late 90s comes along, and I meet this couple over here, the Johnsons, great people. And to keep that story short, they bought a house that needed a ton of work. And I got it. They were already living in it, so I had to do the work while they were living in it. And I got it done. And then they were the first people to really trust me to do something nice, like give me real money for a piece of furniture. Now, when you're working as a carpenter, you know, you can charge, you're always better off charging by the day. It's better for you, it's better for the client. If you're charging by the hour, as we know, we see it all the time, people will milk that. You know, they'll make things take longer. I don't do that. I can't do that. I want to get it done. I want to get it over with. I want to come home and relax or do other things with my time. It's a problem I have with the film industry. You're locked down to a minimum of 10 hours a day. Most of the time you're doing 12 hours, 14 hours a day. But that's not all work. You're working 6 hours a day, but you're there for 10 or 12 hours. That used to drive me crazy. And the money was okay, but they were taking taxes out and everything at the time. And at the time, I remember that those were the Clinton years. And I remember looking at my paycheck like, well, how much are they taking out? It was ridiculous. So in my mind, that was one of the biggest reasons why I got out of the film industry. Because that just didn't make any sense to me. I knew I could make more money working less and not being distracted by nonsense and telling me to do things that don't make any sense to me. And the other thing about the film industry was you could be proud because you could look back and watch a film that you worked on, but at the end of the day, it all goes in the garbage. Every prop I made, though, used to get taken by the producers or the directors or somebody on set. And I made props that ended up in the prop houses and were used for years, decades. I'd get a call every once in a while because a lot of times I'd write my name on something. And somebody say, hey, man, I'm working with a prop you made back in the 90s. That was crazy. Anyhow, so by around 2000, 99, 2000, I was doing my own thing, and my rates were obviously changing, and that was like $20 an hour, things went up to $30 an hour. And I started getting better at what I was doing. And depending on what was going on with the country, like who was running the country, that would dictate the kind of work I was doing. So when the country was doing well economically and the stock markets were doing good, I did better and I got more into the furniture thing. And I became a snob just doing furniture. And at that time, I was charging per piece. Now, and I was charging quite a bit of money. But keep in mind, I didn't have the perfect workspace. It would take me longer to do a lot of things. And even now with the workspace I have. So I have to think about my time that way. But I was pricing pieces for thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. But I was lucky because I had a clientele that could do it. Now, this is another point I have to make. If you don't live in a city like this, people ask me all the time, why am I in LA? Well, the main reason, I don't think about it a lot of the time like this, but it's because Los Angeles, if you're doing the right thing for a living, it's kind of like an economic powerhouse for itself. So, like, even during the Great Depression, people still went to the movies, right? So basically, the entertainment business still drives the economy here, even if you're not affiliated with it. Um, we recently had this strike, whatever, that happens all the time. But there's always still the people who support the actors. There's, agents, things like that, writers, producers, directors. I've mentioned this already. And those people who are in that industry who are making money, they hire people like me, dog groomers, other people do custom things to their houses. They spend money on themselves. They're lavish. They want cool, unique things. So I was in the perfect area for being the person that I am. That just worked out. So, I remember doing that cherry chair you've seen here, and I might put a couple pictures at the end if I think to. I probably won't, but I might. I've got videos. I'll put links to the videos I've shot in the last few months because I did it for the YouTube channel for you guys to see the quality of the work I do. Because sometimes you're coming to the page and you just see me put a skylight in or something, and that's, I learned how to do that, over 30 years ago. It's easy. I don't have to think about it. But when it comes to the high art stuff, that's what I'd rather be doing. And I did that cherry chair. It was just under 10 grand to do that chair and ottoman back, in the early 2000s. So if I had to do that chair today, it would be twice that. That would be at least be $25,000 to make that chair. I know some of you are like, what? That's crazy. But the amount of time it takes, the amount of work that's in it, and it's a one-off unique art piece. And the truth is, that's cheap. There's a place here called the Pacific Design Center. There's a lot of high-end design joints around town. If you went to these places and looked at, keep in mind, by the way, it takes me so long to get a piece done. By the time I'm done, because the truth is, that might sound like a lot of money to you, but by the time I'm done with it, I'm out of money. I got to find the next project. So in between those projects, or really what would happen is between good clients. So every once in a while, like I have a client now, where you get in and you start doing work for them, and you discover all these things that the house needs. I do all that on top of building them a high-end piece of furniture at some point. Usually what happens is I get the house dialed, and they like me so much that they'll keep me around making higher-end pieces after that. And eventually you get to a point where you've done everything. And I've had 3, 4, 5 clients like that out here over the years. Like some of these people I've done work where they've kept me busy for a year, 2 years. And keep in mind, with all the accidents I've had and surgeries and recoveries, not just what happened on the movie set, but all the motorcycle accidents and everything else. I think I did the math once. I lost about 9 years of work where I wasn't working due to recovery. So, yeah. And I don't have insurance or anything, health benefits. It's just me, all alone. Now, I've also set my life up in a way where I have low overhead. So I could always work for less money. But again, now we're going to get into this because I didn't know. So you get in through the 2000s, the 2000 teens, and I had a rough time. Those 8 years, the Obama years were tough on me because the economy went to crap during that time, at least for us, people like me. People weren't spending the money like they had been previous to that. There was too much uncertainty in the markets and that sort of thing. So I had to get back to doing contractor grade stuff. But again, I'm working mostly on homes. I pick my clients too. Won't work for everybody that calls me and I talk to or have a meeting with. But a lot of the homes I'm working on are built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm going in there and I have to do something for somebody, but I can do a thing, I can upgrade. For instance, I can upgrade a kitchen, cabinets and whatnot. I can make it look exactly like it did when it was installed, but now it'll accommodate modern appliances. Little things like that. Most carpenters, when they come in, they do something, they take a wall down, they put something back, they replace a door, uh, they're replacing it with new stuff. And so that when you go in the house, it jumps out at you. You know, hard corners, you know, with drywall bead corners. That doesn't match a house from the 20s. You know what I'm saying? And I can make a door from scratch. It's not cheap, but I can do that. So I can make what I need to make the job blend with the original architectural integrity aesthetic that was intended. So that is a skill and it's an art form, and that demands more money. But I never thought about it that way. For me, it was always just work. About 6, 7 years ago, a buddy of mine, he's in Moab. He's from where I live back in Jersey, and he's got a company there, West Side Woodworks. Great guy. Look him up if you're a Moab and you need work. They're the best in town. He's got a bunch of employees, and he was asking me what I was charging, and at the time, it was not charging enough money. I'm never charging enough money. It sounds like I am, but believe me, I'm not. Keep in mind, I'm also really kind of semi-retired, and I have been for the last 15 years. I don't work. I don't put in 40-hour work weeks. I do what I need to do to pay the bills or get things that I want. That's it. I just kind of hustle. So, like everybody else, I don't like working that much. It's frustrating. When you're doing something original all the time, there's just constant challenges. Now that's good because it works your brain. You become a smarter person. You learn how to deal with stuff. You on the fly, you can make a change, figure out how to get something done. You develop this muscle in your brain of constant problem solving, being cool. You know, flip out when things don't go right. You can take a thing that you might see as a mistake at first and turn that into a benefit or a design change or something. So I'm kind of talking about philosophy here to a certain degree as well. If you're just a straight up carpenter, handyman guy, framer, that is a different level. It's a totally different level. However, this is what I'll be getting to towards in a few more minutes here. Those guys today are making really good money. I mean, ridiculous, over the top. And not all the work is that good. I'm constantly coming in and redoing things that were just done. And I was doing that when I first got here. That blew my mind too. Anyhow, the brain. So, yeah, those years were tough with him. And so during those years, you know, was it 2008? To 16, whenever that was there, I had to get back to doing the contractor type stuff. But again, always with imagination, you know, doing custom work on these homes here. And like I said, about 8 years ago or so, 6, 7 years ago, my buddy called me up. He's like, dude, there's guys here in Moab. They're charging $75 an hour. They don't have anywhere near the skill set you have. Okay. That works out to basically $600 a day. And it's always good to figure out a day rate. This is what I need per day. Another thing I have to touch on here is what I can accomplish and to the degree of proficiency that I can do it is different than the guy who's charging by the hour. So you might think this guy who's charging by the hour is a better deal if you only care about the money. Oh, it's a simple job. All right. Well, he's going to milk it. It's going to take extra time. And in the end, the job's not going to be done as well as I do in less time. So I can come in and do a job in less time, do it better. Why should I make less money than the guy who's going to do a crappier job and take longer? You're not paying me for the hour of time I'm working. You're paying me for the decades of knowledge that I have, the ability that I have, the vision that I have, the artistry that will be revealed in the final product. That's what you're paying me for. And guys like me. It's not just about me, about other craftsmen out there. I'm a woodworker, craftsman, artist, not just a carpenter. It's easy to just say carpenter when I'm having a conversation with somebody because then they can equate that. You say these other things, again, it sounds pretentious. They've talked to guys before that have said that, and they've looked at their work, and it's been garbage. A lot of garbage work out there. But again, back to the numbers. So I was trying to figure things out at like $600 a day, but my day might only be 5 hours. It's still going to be that full day rate because I know I could easily been there 8 hours. It just doesn't make sense to figure things out by the hour. And so when I figure out a piece of furniture, it's the same sort of thing. Now, jump ahead. Recently, I was out here working for Sarah Wonder Hussey at her place, and I didn't charge her anything. I did it because we're friends. She needed some help. She put me up, she fed me every night, entertained me. We went out, and they ended up giving me a few bucks at the end, cover my gas and everything, and that was nice of her, and I'm more than happy to do that. Plus, more importantly, a lot of you are watching me right now because of her, and I value that. To me, there's worth there. She's doing me a huge favor by doing a video. I think the last time I looked at her video, it had like 90,000 views already. And that gives me more subscribers, and it's helping my YouTube out tremendously. And to me, that's worth it. That's worth it. But it came up, numbers came up in that one. And I think I mentioned something that a guy charged her. And so some of you have been watching me lately with some of the stuff I'm doing. I've been getting some private messages, and some of them are in the comments under the videos. You'll see them. And one guy in particular said, hey man, you figure out this problem. You did all this is the skylight. He's like, you did the skylight right. He's like, you did all the framing correct. You got the hangers. Everything's right. You blocked it up. You know what the issue is. You're solving that. He says, with your skill level, you're a $150 an hour guy. This is 2023. And I hear $150 an hour. I'm like, that sounds outrageous to me. That sounds outrageous. Coming from $4.75 an hour when I started. Think about that. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. It's freaking outrageous, right? But I decided to talk to people again. Because again, I don't talk to anybody else that does anything close to what I do. I don't know any other carpenters out here. Not anymore. I'm not talking to trade guys. I don't know what they're charging. Keep in mind, they have more overhead. They're licensed, a lot of them. They're bonded. They've got insurance. So they need to charge at least that. Meaning I could come in under that number. But again, if people are used to paying that to get okay work, they should be paying somebody like me who can do better work, right? Don't judge me on the contracting type work you're seeing. It's still very good, and I know how to do things, but my real skill is doing the furniture thing and custom built-ins. But anyhow, I started talking to people. So I have this electrician of mine. It's a woman, Japanese girl, Michelle. She's a licensed electrician. She's a licensed plumber. And she charges $125 an hour. And electricians, plumbers, they've always been high. It's a simpler job in a way, but when it comes to plumbing, you don't want to be crawling around underneath the house in mud that's caused by a leaking toilet. You know what I mean? And do those. That job, same thing with the electrical thing. Or HVAC guys, all that stuff. They make good money. And those other jobs, the electricians and the HVAC guys, that's a cleaner job, But anyhow, that's what they charge. So then I talked to some other people, and she was telling me she knows contractors, and they're charging anywhere from like $135 to $165 an hour, $180 an hour. She said some of them. So I was like, oh wow, okay, did not know this. And then I talked to a buddy of mine who's a painting contractor. He's got employees, and he'll bill his guys out at like $180 a day, but he bills himself. Or was that right? Or no, I'm sorry. I think he said $85 an hour for his normal painter guys. So all they're doing is painting. That's what they're doing. They're freaking painting. But he owns the place, the business, and he's billing himself at $200 an hour. So this is where we're at today. I had to have a conversation with my client about it. I said, you're still going to get a deal, but things are going up. This is just how it is. And the cost of living here and everything else. So really this video is me more so just explaining this in a way, because this inflation thing, like what the dollar is worth, what you could have lived on in the 80s compared to now. I wish I would have thinking to open up the computer and look this up, because $4.75 an hour in 1987 is probably like getting paid $40 an hour today. That's where we're at, man. I mean, just what everything costs now is outrageous. I haven't felt it that badly because I live in an apartment I've been in for almost 30 years, so my rent is extremely affordable compared to everybody else. I own a used vehicle that I'm not making payments on. I don't have any kids that I know about, certainly not that I'm supporting, right? I'm single. Uh, you know, I mean, if I had a girlfriend right now, if I would have had a girlfriend for the last few years, I would have been charging way more money back then because curves cost money in all aspects of life. Women cost money. I love that song, Easy Money. Need some easy money. So, yeah, that's just where we're at, man. And I'm blown away. So if you're watching this, and if you watched it this far, and you're a tradesman, and you don't have to give up the goose here, you don't have to give out too much personal information of what you're specifically making. Or if you've hired somebody recently in your areas, in the comments, I'd like to know where you're at in the country, or the world for that matter, and let me know what you've been paying Craftsman, right? And even a carpenter to come in, or a handy guy. I'd like to know that too. What handy guys are charging, per day or something now. Or if you're one of those guys watching this, what are you charging? Do you know what the going rate is where you live? Because that's another thing. If I move to Arizona, which I'm seriously contemplating, I got a house in Huachuca City, cost of living there is a lot less. I'm pretty certain, I don't think that I can charge what I could get here, there. Another reason why I'm still here. So I'm real curious about that. New York City, I was told years ago, I had a buddy who was a Fenton Lawless. Look him up. He's a buddy of mine. I haven't talked to Fenton in a little while. Fenton was a bartender at a joint called Primola on the Upper West Side. A lot of mobsters used to eat there. Woody Allen ate there 3-4 nights a week. It might even still exist. I don't know. But I went in there one day back in the 90s in a t-shirt and a pea coat with jeans and engineer boots. I walked up to the door and there was this big freaking Italian guy in a nice suit. Stops me at the door. Says, "Excuse me, sir. What would you like? What do you need?" I did not fit in that joint. But as soon as I mentioned Fenton's name, "Oh, you know Fenton? Come on in." And there's a little bar there and a big opening into the dining room, but with a black curtain so you can't see in. So people sit at the bar like any other joint, right? And you're waiting for your party to come in or a table to open. I wonder if there was another door. I don't remember a lot of people walking out of the curtain. Anyhow, as I'm sitting there, Fenton's feeding me free drinks, and I'm meeting all these people and having great conversations. I met 3 or 4 people. And every time their party would arrive or a table would open, they would leave. Fenton would say, "That guy owns 3 parking garages in the city. This guy owns that. This guy owns that. This guy does that. This guy here, be careful of him." But they were all uber wealthy. They all loved me. And every one of them, Fenton lived next to me for about a year. He was married to a casting director. He's been in a bunch of movies. He's still acting, and he still does it. He's a great dude, character guy. At that time, he had just been in Air Force One, and he was in Mississippi Burning, and I Shot Andy Warhol, and a bunch of stuff. And so we were tight. We used to smoke cigars a couple nights a week at the cigar joint down on Beverly. And so here I am sitting there with him in New York City at this bar. So he's telling everybody how talented I am. Every one of them offered me a job right there. And he was telling me, he's like, "Dude, if you lived in the city, you'd be rich." But working in the city, man, you need a van with locks. You need somebody to watch your van. There's parking. I did a brownstone there with a guy I met on the beach in Jersey back in the 90s. And we had to walk and talk to these mobsters down by the river to get a dumpster to put in front of this brownstone for our trash. It was really cool because he was funny. He was a funny guy. New York, angry dude. Looked like Mel Gibson. He had this big scar on his face. If he found a bag that didn't belong there, he'd open it up, find the address, go down there, kick the door open, and throw the trash in the lobby of the building. And right across the street in the basement was a restaurant. And we made a deal with them where they were allowed to put their trash in the garbage. We got free dinner every night. That's one of the cool things about New York. You can work those deals. But the logistics of trying to work in a city, there's no way. I already knew that, so I wasn't about to move there and do that. But if you're living in a big city or near a big city and that's your clientele, you're going to be able to command higher prices if you're good. And the number one thing is, and actually, there's plenty of people making money that are ripping people off. I see it all the time, and I hate it. I can't do it. I won't be able to sleep at night. But you have to have integrity, right? Doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. Be honest, right? Be as fair as you can be. But also, communication is the key. You have to be able to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, what we're getting into. This is not something that you're going to be good at if you're younger, right off the jump. It takes experience. 38 years or more I've been doing this. So when I speak with a client, I can say, okay, here's what we're going to do. And they think, oh, you're just going to take a door out and put a door in. Well, I'm going to say, well, now listen, that's the plan. It's an old structure. Just fair warning. If I open this up and there's termite damage or something, I'm going to have to replace all that framing. That's going to change the number on the job. So having foresight you know what the problems you've had in the past, right? They could happen now. You have to warn the people about that first. I would rather come in a little high on a project and be happy versus trying to undercut to make the numbers sound good to get the job and then tell them later, you got to give me more money. That's all my clients. That's one of their biggest complaints is not getting what they were paying for or being told something else or the job's not that good. The other thing is with me, and this is a little different from a lot of other people, if I'm doing a piece of furniture, or if it's a big enough project where I'm going to spend a lot of time in the shop, just shop building, I'm going to give you a number and I'm going to want 2/3 up front. Because the truth is the 2/3 pretty much covers the project. If I've only ever twice had an issue with not finishing a project, or the client losing it because it's taking too long and they just wanted to stop paying me or whatever. It's only happened twice in 38 years. So the 2/3 covers me for any problems. Also, it gets me to the point where if I get the job done and they're creating an issue that doesn't really exist because they're trying to get a better deal after you already had an arrangement and I'm frustrated. I shouldn't tell you this because you might try to do this to me. This is why I pick my clients. But I can always just drop everything and walk away and not feel like I lost out on something. So for me, the last third on a high-end furniture art piece, that's kind of my gravy. Right? That's the way I figure it. So that's how it is, man. And yeah, so I hope this helps like the young people. And for those of you that have been curious, now you know. And I can only do so much work so many days in a row where I have to step away from it and do something else because it's physically taxing on me. When I was on the roof the other day, this 32-year-old roofing guy, he's like, he's how old am I? I'm 57, or going to be 57 here next month. He's like, don't you think you should slow down? I'm jumping off the roof onto the roof of the van, climbing up, carrying the stuff, moving the skylight, and I'm probably stronger and in better shape than he is at 32 years old. And I told him that's my thing. I mean, I stay fit enough to keep being able to do this, but he's not wrong. I'm feeling it. I mean, I know that my strength isn't what it was 20 years ago. So I have to start thinking about those things. I have to slow down and do these other things to make money. But yeah, $4.75 in 1987, $150 an hour now? How does that even happen? To me, that's a result of what's going on with how the country's being run, because what the dollar's worth now is nothing compared to what it was worth then, right? So that's just where we're at now. So now you know, and again, in the comments, let me know about this. Like if you charge this or what you charge, where you're at, what you've paid, what you've been paying. I am really genuinely curious. Genuinely curious. That's it for now. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. Be good to one another. I'll catch you guys in the next one.